The Lamborghini died in the middle of a sunlit avenue like a wounded animal refusing to take one more breath, and beside it, billionaire Caspian Vale stood shaking with a checkbook in his hand, ready to spend $2 million to bring back the last thing his father had ever loved. People gathered under the bright noon sky, phones raised, whispers spreading like fire, because everyone knew that car. It was the golden Lamborghini Aventador that had belonged to Aurelio Vale, the empire builder, the cold legend, the father Caspian never got to forgive. And then, from the back of the crowd, a young mechanic named Mara Solen stepped forward with grease on her hands, dust on her boots, and a quiet look in her eyes. While the city's most expensive engineers had called the car dead, she opened the fuse box, held up one tiny burned piece of plastic, and said the problem would cost $9. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet people who change lives without asking for applause, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Lifeline Diaries. Caspian Vale had spent most of his life believing money could fix anything except the silence between a son and his father. His father, Aurelio, had built luxury hotels across continents, owned islands he rarely visited, and collected cars that looked less like machines and more like trophies from another world. But the gold Lamborghini was different. Aurelio drove it himself every Sunday morning, always alone, always at sunrise, returning with the same unreadable expression on his face. Caspian hated that car when he was young. He hated the way his father polished it with patience he never gave his family, hated the way the engine's roar filled the driveway louder than any words of affection, hated that a machine seemed to know Aurelio better than his own son did. When Aurelio died suddenly from a heart attack, the Lamborghini became the only thing in the mansion that still felt alive. Caspian locked it away in a glass garage and avoided it for months. But grief has a strange way of turning resentment into longing. One bright Wednesday afternoon, nearly a year after the funeral, Caspian ordered the car brought out for a charity event honoring his father's name. He told himself it was only for appearances, but when he touched the steering wheel, he remembered being 8 years old in the passenger seat, watching his father's hands shift gears with calm certainty. He remembered wanting to ask if he was proud of him, but being too afraid of the answer. The car started beautifully at first. Its engine growled through the city as cameras flashed and crowds waved. Caspian drove down Meridian Avenue beneath rows of palm trees and glass towers, dressed in a black suit, his jaw tight behind designer sunglasses. Then, without warning, the engine coughed once, the dashboard flickered, and the Lamborghini rolled to a dead stop at the busiest intersection in the city. Horns screamed. Traffic locked behind him. Reporters rushed forward. Caspian turned the key again and again, but the car gave him nothing. No roar. No spark. No mercy. By noon, 3 luxury car specialists had arrived, each with tablets, scanners, and polished confidence. They spoke in low voices about electrical failure, engine control modules, rare parts from Italy, and full system restoration. One said the car might never run the same again. Another suggested replacing nearly everything. A third, sensing Caspian's desperation, mentioned a figure that made the crowd gasp, $2 million, maybe more. Caspian did not blink. He simply pulled out his checkbook, because the thought of losing the car felt like losing his father twice. That was when Mara Solen saw the scene from across the street. She had been delivering a repaired scooter to a bakery owner, her face damp with sweat from the June heat, her work shirt faded from too many washes. Mara was 29, the daughter of a mechanic who had taught her that machines rarely lied, people usually did, and the smallest broken part could silence the strongest engine. Her own garage sat between a laundromat and a closed-down flower shop, barely surviving after her father's stroke left him unable to work. She fixed delivery bikes, old taxis, and family cars whose owners paid in installments and apologies. She had never touched a Lamborghini before, but she knew the sound of an electrical failure when she heard one. At first, no one noticed her. She moved through the crowd carefully, eyes on the dashboard lights, the faint click under the hood, the smell of heated plastic. A security guard blocked her until she pointed toward the fuse panel and said the issue was not the engine. The expensive specialists laughed under their breath. Caspian looked at her like she had stepped out of another world. She asked for 10 minutes. He nearly refused, but something in her calmness unsettled him. Everyone else was performing certainty. Mara was simply listening. She opened the small panel, checked the circuits one by one, and found it quickly. A burned fuse. $9 at most. The kind of failure that could stop a masterpiece and embarrass a billionaire in front of half the city. She replaced it with one from her roadside kit, wiped her hand on a rag, and nodded toward the ignition. Caspian turned the key. The Lamborghini exploded back to life, its roar echoing between the buildings like thunder. The crowd cheered. The specialists went silent. Caspian stared at the steering wheel as if it had spoken to him. But Mara did not smile like someone who had won. She simply packed her tools and told him to have the wiring inspected because fuses did not burn for no reason. Caspian offered her money immediately, thousands at first, then more when she refused. Mara only asked for $9 and a bottle of water. That was when Caspian truly looked at her. Noticed the oil beneath her fingernails, the tiredness she carried without complaint, the dignity in the way she stood before people who had dismissed her. For the first time in years, he felt ashamed of how easily he had reached for money before understanding the problem. The video went viral before sunset. A billionaire ready to pay $2 million. A mechanic fixing it with a $9 fuse. People laughed, shared, argued, praised Mara, mocked Caspian, and turned the moment into a joke. But Caspian did not laugh. That night, he sat alone in his father's garage, staring at the Lamborghini under soft white lights. He kept hearing Mara's words in his mind. Fuses do not burn for no reason. Somehow, it felt less like advice about a car and more like a warning about his life. The next morning, Caspian drove to Mara's garage without cameras, assistants, or security. The place was small, warm, and crowded with tools. A radio played softly near the workbench. An elderly man sat by the open bay door in a wheelchair, watching Mara adjust the brakes on an old sedan. That was her father, Mara Solen, once known as the best mechanic in the East District. His hands trembled now, but his eyes still followed every movement with pride. Caspian stepped inside wearing shoes that cost more than Mara's monthly rent, and for a moment the whole garage seemed to hold its breath. Mara did not treat him like a billionaire. She treated him like a customer whose car needed checking. She inspected the Lamborghini properly this time and found a damaged wire near the battery, worn from years of poor maintenance hidden beneath cosmetic perfection. Caspian watched her work in silence. The gold paint reflected her face as she leaned over the engine, patient and focused. He asked how she had learned so much. She told him her father had taught her before the stroke, and that she had kept the garage open because it was the only place he still felt like himself. As days passed, Caspian found excuses to return. At first it was for the Lamborghini. Then for coffee from the bakery next door. Then because the garage felt more honest than his mansion. He watched Mara negotiate gently with a delivery driver who could not pay full price. He watched her stay late to repair a single mother's van before school pickup. He watched Ivo smile whenever his daughter solved a problem he had taught her to see. In that cramped garage, surrounded by old engines and afternoon light, Caspian began to understand something his father's empire had never taught him: value was not the same as price. One afternoon, Mara found a small leather notebook hidden inside the Lamborghini's glove compartment, tucked behind the manual. Caspian had never seen it before. The pages belonged to Aurelio. They were not business notes. They were memories. Short entries from Sunday drives. Regrets written in careful handwriting. One page stopped Caspian cold. Aurelio had written that he drove alone because it was the only place he allowed himself to miss his son without knowing how to reach him. Another entry said he had planned to invite Caspian on a drive the week he died, to apologize for making success feel more important than love. Caspian broke in a way no public failure had ever broken him. He sat on a wooden stool in Mara's garage with the notebook in his hands, crying like a boy who had waited too long for a father to turn around. Mara did not comfort him with empty words. She simply placed a clean rag beside him, gave him space, and let the silence be kind. Outside, the city kept moving in bright daylight, unaware that inside a small garage, a billionaire was finally hearing the apology he thought would never come. The change in Caspian did not happen all at once. Real change rarely does. He still woke some mornings with old arrogance rising like armor. He still wanted to solve pain by writing checks. But Mara challenged him without cruelty. When he offered to buy her a massive new garage, she refused unless it became a training center for young people who could not afford trade school. When he offered to pay off every debt, she asked him to fund scholarships instead. When he asked why she would not take something for herself, she said she was taking something for herself, a future where people like her father were not forgotten when their hands stopped working. Together, they built the Solen Foundation for Practical Trades in Aurelio Vale's old warehouse district. Caspian funded it, but Mara designed it. The first class had 12 students, a runaway teenager, a widowed mother, 2 brothers from a shelter, a former inmate trying to begin again, and others who had been told they were not smart enough, polished enough, or lucky enough to matter. Ivo attended the opening in his wheelchair, wearing his old mechanic's jacket. When Mara placed the first toolbox in a student's hands, Caspian saw something brighter than any Lamborghini shine across the room. Months later, on another golden afternoon, Caspian drove the restored Lamborghini through the city, not to show it off, but to lead a parade of repaired cars from the training center. Behind him came vehicles fixed by students who had once believed their lives were broken beyond repair. Mara rode beside him, her window down, her hair moving in the warm wind. For the first time, the passenger seat did not feel haunted. It felt forgiven. Near the old intersection where the car had died, Caspian pulled over. The traffic light turned red. The same towers glittered above them. He rested his hands on the wheel and remembered the man he had been that day, ready to spend $2 million because he did not know how to sit with grief. He remembered the crowd laughing, the specialists guessing, Mara stepping forward with nothing but knowledge, courage, and a $9 fuse. That tiny fuse had not only restarted a car. It had opened a locked room inside him. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to Lifeline Diaries for more emotional stories about kindness, healing, and second chances. Special request: comment a small act can save a life if you believe even the simplest kindness can change someone's whole future. Years later, people still told the story as if it were about a billionaire, a Lamborghini, and a mechanic who embarrassed the experts. But those who knew the truth understood it differently. It was about a son who thought love had died with his father, a daughter who carried her father's legacy with aching hands, and a little burned fuse that proved broken things are not always finished. Sometimes they are only waiting for the right person to look closer, care deeper, and believe they are worth fixing.